How's it going, everybody? And I'd like to welcome you to this video. Um, if you hadn't noticed, this video is about my experience taking the 3 exams for the CCNP and finally passing the CCNP. So I'm extremely excited that I finally passed. It's been a long journey. It took me about 6 months to complete it. Um, on average, it's about 2 months per exam. Actually, it's a little less than that actually for some, a little more than others. Um, for the route exam, which was probably the most difficult out of the three, that was the hardest one. That took me the longest amount of time to study for, the most amount of study to finally take and pass it. There were plenty of times when I was taking the exam where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to pass. So, it definitely is a test where you need to know how routing really works. You will be tested on pretty much every aspect of routing that there is out there to deal with, which is static, dynamic, redistribution, um, VPN, tunneling, things like that. You will see simulations. You will see a lot of how does OSPF work? What is the process for OSPF to form an adjacency? Do you know the steps? Do you know the init, the two-way, the xstart, the exchange, things like that? When it comes to EIGRP, you will need to know things like how does it form. Realistically, you need to know a lot about each protocol. You need to be able to configure them from start to finish. You need to know how the majority of each particular feature inside of each protocol works, what they do, and how they do what they're supposed to do. So, at the end of the day, when I got the pass notification and the T-shoot exam this morning, I was extremely happy. There were I did very well on it. I came to as close to 1,000 as you possibly can, and at the end of the day, that's what matters. Doesn't matter how many times you took the exam. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into it. What matters is when you get that pass. And about an hour and a half ago is when I got the official validation from Cisco. When I actually logged into the validation page, and it said it wanted to know, it wanted me to validate my shipping address, so they could mail me my kit, which I knew at that point I had passed, and it was official. So I am now a CCNP. I'm extremely excited about that. When it comes to the switch exam, I've had a lot of experience with switching. A lot of the stuff that I've had experience with switching comes from working in an enterprise environment where that's the majority of what you do. So a lot of what I did with let me draw here. A lot of what I did with Switch was pulling from that experience. And I have to tell you, I used a combination of Internet Network Expert, INE.com. I used a combination of, when it came to INE, I used their BGP series to learn BGP. I used their MPLS series to learn MPLS. I used their CCNP and CCNA boot camps to pass both the CCNA and the CCNP. So I've used INE for the majority of my training. In addition to, but not quite as much as INE, CBT Nuggets. I use Jeremy Chara for most of my training as well. I started with CBT Nuggets and then I've migrated over to INE. And the reason for that is I find Jeremy gets off topic too much for me. He's a good trainer, I won't knock him on that. But when he's delivering his videos, I often find it hard to follow along because he gets off on tangents or he misses something. I spent a lot of time when it came to going through the route exam to where I spent a lot of time simply setting up the lab. I'd fire the video up, I'd be gung-ho, really looking forward to go through the video, and then the first 2 minutes he'd be getting like EIGRP over frame relay. And I'd be like, what? Oh, I don't know how to do that. So when I created my CCNP route exam series, I went through and made sure I showed you how to set up the frame relay switch. I set you up so that it would just be a matter of going through the setup videos, and then it would kick off and go into the more complicated stuff like the actual configuration and the theory behind it. So a lot of what I do nowadays is I set you up, I get you ready for the series, and then we actually dive into the series. So um, the switch exam was good. I have a rack of equipment here at home that I used for that exam, and it was really cool because it gave me the ability to use live equipment to study for the test, and that to me was the make it or break it because um, a lot of stuff that I was worried about getting tested on I never even saw. But then again, you never know what you might see on the exam, so you study everything, and you know it off the top of your head. So when it came to T-shoot, I made sure that when I got to T-shoot, I knew how to configure everything on the T-shoot exam. I could go through and I could get NTP up and running. I could get DHCP. I could get web services set up. I knew how to debug. I knew how to do show commands, things of that nature. So I really made sure that I knew how everything worked and what it was that I needed to do to get it to where it needed to be. Now, with the T-shoot exam, that's more of a configuration look-through. So you're given a topology. Cisco publishes the topology so that you can go in and study it. Now, that's kind of counterproductive with some people. To me, I didn't need a topology. I didn't need to study it before I got into it because of the fact of when you're in the tickets, you're pretty much, you start at 1, you go to the client 1, because you got to read what the ticket says. You got to read the issue. You can't just go in there and try to figure out what the fault is. You got to read the ticket. So if you don't read the ticket, you're going to have a hard time trying to figure out what the problem is. It'll pretty much tell you IPv6. It'll pretty much tell you the client 1 can't ping the web server. So once you see that, then it's just a matter of you going in and figuring out where the problem is. So I won't tell you my strategy for passing the exam was very simple. I went in and taking some advice from some people that have taken and passed the exam, I made a checklist of possible issues you might run into. So like there's a lot of OSPF, so I made sure to know all the OSPF commands, or the majority of them anyway. EIGRP, what's needed for that. So what I did is I went in there and I documented each thing that I was running into. So for one, I didn't know what any of the faults were when I walked into the exam. So I had to go in and feel it out. You got to learn a little bit. So you never know what they're going to throw at you. So you can do a few show commands, and then you got to look at the show run output. You got to compare, see what's going on, and you got to realistically, I would take probably a good half hour. Go through each ticket and see what every ticket has and get an idea as to where the problem might be. Try to narrow it down within a couple of devices. You can't just go into the exam gung-ho and just try to knock it out. It's never going to work. I would highly recommend just go in there, take the when you sit for the exam, go through your few multiple choice questions, which you'll get, just to get your blood pumping, and then you're thrown into a 13-ticket simulation. You're tossed into a 13-ticket simulation, and your job is to go based on every ticket, and each ticket is independent of each other. So when you fix a ticket on one device or on one, if you solve a ticket, that ticket's done. That issue is no longer there for you to try to fix. So it's a good exam when it comes to testing your ability to troubleshoot an issue. I will tell you, there are some issues in some of the tickets where you really have to dig. So I can't tell you what the issues were that I saw or the ticket numbers that I saw them on. What I can tell you is you really need to know how the technologies work. So that is pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of each test as I took them. I took them in the route, switch, and T-shoot order, and so it's official. I am a CCNP. I'm really happy about that. I've actually just updated Career Builder and Monster and Milwaukee Jobs to give myself the best possible chance of getting a new position, and because right now I'm pretty much doing independent consulting for my own consulting firm, and business is pretty slow. So I'm looking to get hired on to a potential employer here in the next week or so, and get the ball rolling. I know the CCNP is definitely going to take me up over the edge, and I am going gung ho for the CCIE. I'm studying for the written right now, and we're going to go from there. So at the end of the day, I'm a CCNP, so I'm really happy about that. If anybody has any questions, watch the channel trailer, and in the very beginning, I go through and I show you how to get a hold of me and where to go from there. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.